Hey guys, Dave here. Welcome to the Centurions review, the punk rock band of Wargame Review Institutions. This is Moon Base Clavius from Task Force Games. I'm going to show the basics of the rules of this and maybe play a turn or two, and then Len and I will do our review portion. So what's going on in this scenario? This is scenario 1. There's 3 scenarios in the game. In this one, the Russians want to take 4 forts, which are located here, 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 and here. And also 1 colony, and the colonies are located in here. Or they can just take all of the colonies in Moon Base Clavius. Sequence of play is you do your combat phase, then your movement phase, then your reinforcement phase. Let me repeat that. You do your combat phase before movement, and then it's the second player turn who does combat, movement, and reinforcement. The Russians go first. So the Russians are starting off board. So they're going to enter the battlefield. One thing I want to mention is all units in this are air units which ignore terrain when moving, and they just pay an extra 2 movement points when they enter an enemy's zone of control. The only units in this game that are not air units are the self-propelled batteries, which are kind of like a cross between like a tank and a self-propelled gun. Those are not used in the first scenario. Only the Americans have those when the Marines come in the last scenario. So let's do some movement here. These guys got a movement of 10, and there's a stacking limit of 3. So they're going to enter right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then this unit will follow up. Normally I put plexiglass down, but it reflects into the camera and you can't see the map, so I got to do this without plexiglass, so there's going to be counters falling down. These will move in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He doesn't have enough to move into the zone of control because it's 2 extra, so he stops there. And this one will move in. He's going to move in right with this guy. And then down here, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And these will come in. So that's the end of the Russians portion of the turn. So we're still on turn 1. They have 7 turns to meet their objective. So it's pretty difficult for the Russians when this game is played in individual scenarios. When it's played in the campaign game, they get an extra turn to do basically the same thing. So it's actually easier for the Russians to win the campaign game. In the games I've played where I just played the individual scenarios, the Americans always won. And then when I played the campaign scenario, which is all 3 scenarios at once, the Russians won. Americans will go now. As you can see, there's monorails on the board. The Americans can, if they start on a monorail, they can go anywhere on the monorail for free. They don't have to pay any movement points, so they have unlimited movement on the monorail. So let's see if anyone want to move in there. So this one will move in here, and this will move here to guard that colony space. And down here, this will move to that space for free. Alright, and that's the end of the American turn, so we're on turn 2 now. Alright, so the first part of the Russian phase is combat. The only stuff in range are some of their mortars, like right here. Let's see how many mortars are in range. They got 3 in range. Mortars, you just take the face value. So they're going to fire at this right here. So it's just 12. All right, so you go to the combat results table, and they're on a fort, and the strength points are 12. So it's a 4 there, so that means they need to roll a 4 or less to destroy a unit. And there's 3 units there, so you roll for each one. It's on 2 dice, actually. So miss, miss, and miss. All right, and that's all the combat the Russians have, so they're going to move in. He doesn't have enough to move into the zone of control, so he'll have to stop right there. And that will move there. That will move there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let's just go there. And this will go to here. He's got enough to move in the contact. Two, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Gonna move another one to there. That will move there and stop. Oh, actually, no, he did have enough movement to get there. There's no retreats in this game, so you don't have to worry about stuff getting in the way and causing you to lose units from retreats. Alright, so that's the end of Russian movement, so now it's American combat. Americans have, there's 2 types of mortars in this game. There's nuclear mortars where you just use the face value added, which doesn't get divided by the number of defenders you're attacking, or you have regular mortars which do get divided. So the Americans here, they have some nuclear mortars. So they have 12 infantry, or actually those ones there can't fight. So it's 12 infantry plus this regular mortar, so that's 16 divided by 3, so they're at 5, and then they have a nuclear mortar which brings them to 9. And they're on a crater wall, so let's see what the CRT says for a crater wall on a 9. On a 9, they need a 3 or less to hit them on 2 dice, which isn't easy. Miss. Miss. Actually, that one hit, so the one on the bottom was killed. And then over here, we have 6, 12, and we have a regular mortar here. So 16, so to 3 defenders, so that's 5, and then you add the mortar, so it's 9, and they're in rough terrain. Believe it or not, the white section here is actually considered rough. I guess they consider all, everything, the only smooth terrain is this right here. That's considered a crater plain. So rough, and they get a 9, so they need a 3 again. Miss, miss, and miss. Alright, and then in here, so we got 16 to 3, so that would be a 3 to 1. And they're on, or excuse me, 16 to 3, so that's a 5 to 1 rather, and they're on a crater wall, so they need a 2 or less, so that's nearly impossible to hit. Well, not impossible, but close to. 1 in 12 chance. So they missed there. And then over here, some more American. So 6, 12, and that's a nuclear mortar. 12 to 3 is 4, plus a nuclear mortar, so 8 versus that. And they're on a... Actually, going to attack this guy since he's on the plane. So So they need a 4 to hit them. Miss, miss, miss. So now that they're done with combat, they can do movement if they want. They're going to move this stack into here. And this will move around this way. That'll move there. And that will move there. So that's the basics of the game. The only other 2 units I haven't mentioned are the engineer, and the engineers will help when you're attacking either a fort or a colony. It will subtract 1 from your die roll, which is helpful if it's one of the infantry units attacking. And then you have a headquarters. The headquarters allows you to move 2 farther, and it has a strength of 6, so it's not a bad unit. But yeah, those are the basics of the game. Len and I will do our review portion now. Hey guys, Dave and Len here. We are reviewing Moon Base Clavius from Task Force Games. The story behind this game is the author didn't like the changes that Task Force Games made to his game. I guess it wasn't the same game afterwards, so many years later he came out with a re-release of this and just called it Clavius, and that has the original rules before Task Force Games modified them. I think it might have some optional rules or something that don't exist in this. I don't have the new version, but that's the story behind this. Anyhow, what'd you think of it, Len?
It's not the best thing I've ever played. The combat system, calculating that is really, you have to add this, subtract,
divide, yeah.
And that as the game wears on, that gets very hard to do. And I'm surprised I still won, even though I had the system kind of baffled me at times.
Yeah, when I played this on my own, I did 3 solo games of the first scenario, the second scenario, and the third scenario. And in all 3 of those, the Americans won. However, when we played the campaign game, where essentially all 3 are put together into one scenario, the Russians won. The reason I think the Russians won is because by turn 8, the Russians have to control either 4 forts, I think it is, or 4 towns, and they have 8 turns to do it, whereas when the first scenario, they only have 7 turns to do it, which isn't enough. So it's actually easier for the Russians in the campaign game than playing them individually.
I captured the fort on the 8 turn.
Yeah.
I needed 8 turns to do it.
With 7, it would be very hard to do.
Yeah, because there's if you capture like the 2 closest ones, you need a turn or 2 to redeploy for the next ones. Mm-hmm. And if because of the chancy die rolling, some units may hold out longer than expected.
Yeah, it's very dicey. Essentially, you can get a player, or you can play against someone and you just have terrible die rolls and you're just going to lose. And the combat results table is a little unusual, and there's no retreats on it, which really hurts the game. Retreating is a mechanic in war games that adds a lot of strategy. I mean, you try to get your opponent into situations where he has to retreat, and then when he retreats, he must enter one of your zones of control, and then his unit is lost and stuff. This game, with no retreats, it loses that nice element of wargaming.
Oh, something else. You got 3 units in the hex. You roll 3 times. Mm-hmm. 2 units 2 times. Yeah. 1 unit 1 time. It seems like the fewer units you have in a hex, actually, the better chance of your survival.
Well, not really, because you're dividing the combat strength of the infantry against it. So if you have 3 units there, the infantry combat strength against you is divided by 3, whereas if it's 1, you just take it at face value. So. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
I put this in the middle, actually. It's playable, and outside of all the calculations you have to do just to determine what you need to roll. It isn't that bad of a game.
Yeah.
Other people probably like it more.
I mean, it has issues, and I'm sure in his re-release of the game where he fixed everything and made it the way he wanted in the first place, I'm sure that's significantly better. This game, as it is, the Task Force Games version, I'd say is somewhere between mediocre and good. It's really easy to learn. It is fun to play. I mean, it's got issues, but it's not bad. But I got a list of notes I have in the game here. The first is in the sequence of play, you have fire and then move, which hurts the Russians because on the first turn the Russians may not attack at all, no matter what. So that kind of hurts them. And a single nuclear mortar is incapable of destroying units that are in rough fort or crater wall or colony hexes. Just the way the combat results table is set up, which I don't like, because I mean, essentially, if you're standing and a nuclear mortar falls and hits you in the head and explodes and there's nothing left of you but molecules, guess what? You're still alive because you're in rough terrain. I mean, that doesn't make sense.
Shield you from the radiation.
Yeah.
You were in that ditch and you duck and covered.
Mm-hmm. And the game's very dicey. It doesn't say whether you have to occupy or just pass through like a fort or colony hex when you're taking it. We assumed that you had to hold it after you took it, but it doesn't actually say in the rules, so we had to make a judgment call on that. And there's monorails in this, which could be cool, but they're not really used much. You would think they would, since they're all over the map and they give the American player unlimited movement when they're using them, you'd think they'd be used much, but actually they're not used much at all. And that they have a mechanic for the Russians to destroy the monorails, but all units have air movement unless they're an SPB, which is self-propelled battery. So your movement always costs 1 unless you're entering a zone of control, in which case it costs 2 more. So even without the monorails, you have enough movement to do what you want to do, generally, if you're the American player. So that,
and also, as the American, the more you sent out from the Central Plateau to defend the forts, you're weakening the defense forces in the town.
True. Yeah, like in the campaign scenario, or the campaign scenario is all 3 scenarios in one. In that one, in the beginning of the game, the U.S. has to guard 4 of their forts because the Russians have to take those 4 forts in order to continue the game past turn 8. And then later in the game, they have to take the U.S. player has to hold 5 colony units inside the Clavius crater. So essentially, the U.S. player starts the game where he has to guard 9 things, and he's got less units than the Russians, so he's spread really thin. And to make matters worse, the beginning, not only can the Russians just take 4 fort hexes, they can take 4 colony hexes, if I recall correctly. So the U.S. player just has to guard everything, and he's never got enough forces anywhere. And this is a game where the way to win combats is to completely outnumber your enemy and have more nuclear mortars than him. So the U.S. player is put at an extreme disadvantage, having to guard all that stuff. Any other thoughts you have on this? Or
I was thinking, this game I wouldn't mind replaying again, but I also realized after about 5 or 6 playing, I'd probably get bored with it. So that's how you judge whether or not you'd like this game. You know, it'll be fun for a while, but then you probably run out of options.
Yeah, it's all right. And the map for a 1980s map isn't that bad. There was much worse maps back then, so this one's actually for the 80s. An 80s microgame is halfway decent.
Actually, yeah, the map is good for it.
Yeah.
And also the counters aren't that bad either.
Yeah, they're all right, but
the cover was terrible, but not the best.
Yeah. Oh, like I said, I think it's somewhere between fair and good. Where would you put it?
Fair and good. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll have a new review for you next week. Have a good one.